This is a big day for the aerospace company SpaceX. In fact, maybe bigger than big. It successfully launched the Falcon 9 rocket from Cape Canaveral earlier. So part of its mission to send a Japanese communication satellite into orbit. But the real challenge with all of this was still to come, and that was landing the unmanned rocket on a drone ship in the ocean. Last month, SpaceX successfully launched a rocket returning from a space mission for NASA, but the company was doubtful about today's landing. Why? Well, because the rocket was coming in faster than the previous one, and yet, against those odds, Falcon 9 landed right on target. Chief Astronomer Derrick PItts of the Franklin Institute joins us now live from Philadelphia to discuss all the excitement a little bit more. So first of all, your reaction to this landing, what did you think when you saw it?
Oh, I thought it was the most exciting thing I'd seen since the last time he made such a successful attempt. I mean, it was really beautiful to see this spacecraft come back down, the launch vehicle come back down and land right on target, and it was so stable. I mean, that's the really wonderful part, is that it seems like they have figured out all of the little idiosyncrasies that they need to understand about the dynamics of it coming back through the atmosphere and heading for that tiny little target, and then being able to set down on it upright without any kind of anomaly at all. They did a really great job at that.
So put that in perspective for us. You know, what does this mean now that they are able to essentially stick this landing, as you said, and it was so stable? Where can that bring us next?
Well, the significance is that for the last 60 years, we've been throwing the boosters away, either burning them up on re-entry or dropping them into the world's oceans, and then they're just lost to us. And so that's a huge expense that just gets thrown away after use. The significance of this is that being able to accomplish that landing repeatedly means that they can now take that booster, refurbish that booster, and use it again. So they're now driving the cost of access to low Earth orbit down lower and lower and lower. And the more they can do this, the cheaper the access is. And that simply means that there's more access to low Earth orbit. So that in turn turns into expanding our ability to get into space and do more things in space.
What about space travel?
Well, that's the big key to it. I mean, the part of it is that, you know, we have to be able to get the equipment we need into low Earth orbit so that we can turn it into the spacecraft we need to do deep solar system exploration. So by driving down the cost, we can then put those components we need into Earth orbit. There's only two ways to go with this, really. We're either going to launch it from the surface of the Earth, which is very costly, or we're going to figure out an infrastructure that allows us to build it in Earth orbit. Either way we do it, we still are going to have to get humans and supplies off the surface, and as long as we can drive that cost down, which is what Musk is doing, that's going to make space that much more accessible and space travel come much more quickly than we may have thought it would come.
So that's what Elon Musk is doing over at SpaceX, but he's not the only one in this race, especially when it comes to things like space travel, because of course we have Virgin Galactic with Sir Richard Branson, and then there's also Jeff Bezos with this Blue Origin. How are the three of them? I mean, they're obviously pushing each other a little bit, but how is that, you know, helping the people who want to eventually be some of their passengers?
Well, what they're seeing is that they're seeing the development of this space access and this capability, and they're seeing how everybody's going through the steps of being able to develop a successful system that will operate. And what it's showing them is that the future is coming, and that space is becoming more accessible to the everyday person. Now, I know that's a long reach to say, actually, because the cost to go into space with the Virgin Galactic spacecraft is up to $250,000. Not many people have that kind of money accessible to do that kind of trip. But the fact of the matter is that as long as Jeff Bezos with Blue Origin and Elon Musk with SpaceX and Orbital Sciences and the other participants, including Virgin Galactic, are building the infrastructure, it just means that there's going to be easier access, and people will be able to satisfy that urge eventually to get to some kind of space experience for a much lower cost than ever before.
So getting into space, getting into low Earth orbit is one thing, and then there's Mars, which is completely separate, as we know. But there is this, you know, increase in interest, especially on the heels of both the book and the movie The Martian. Where do we stand with that? And could any of what we're seeing actually have an impact on the planning for launching this mission to Mars?
Oh, does it ever have an impact on the planning for that? In fact, The ultimate goal of Elon Musk is to set up colonies on Mars, and he wants them to have people there. So he's developing the launch capability and developing the infrastructure as well as the capability to take humans to Mars. And he's announced that he wants to get this started in just 2 years. Now, if we look at the National Space Agency's efforts to do this, if we look at what NASA's planning, NASA doesn't have a plan to get people to Mars until the 2030s or later. So here we're looking at an advanced capability that's going to cut that time in half. So we may see people on Mars by the early 2020s.
Derrick PItts, a lot to be excited about on this Friday morning. Thanks for coming in and talking with us today.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to all of you for joining us for this hour of MSNBC Live. I'm Erica Hill, in for Tamron Hall. Up next.